The Titanic sinking is one of the most famous maritime disasters of all time. But did the Titanic really sink on the morning of the 15th of April, 1912? What is this conspiracy? Why do people love conspiracies? How is TikTok bringing the switch theory back into people's minds? What is the hook that keeps people coming back to Titanic to talk about it throughout the years? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Titanic Legacy, a podcast that explores Titanic's lasting impact through conversations with creators, authors, artists, filmmakers, historians, entrepreneurs, and more who continue to keep the Ship of Dreams legacy not only alive, but thriving and seemingly growing through their creative work. I'm your host, Paul Carganilla, and today I am excited to bring you a conversation with a Titanic researcher, historian, and author. He's also an adventure novelist, Steve Hall. He's a pillar of the Titanic community, an honorary member of the British Titanic Society, a foundation member of the Titanic and Steamship Historical Society of Australia, and former trustee of the Titanic Research and Modeling Association. He's co-authored 7 books with his mate Bruce Beveridge, and according to Steve's website, this is the most writings by a co-author team in the Titanic field to date. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's waste no more time and welcome him to Titanic Legacy, the podcast. Give it up for author, historian, Steve Hall.
Hey. Wow.
Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm so good. I get the opportunity to talk to people all over the world doing these interviews. I'm here in Southern California, as most people know. Where are you joining us from, sir?
Well, I'm doing it from Ballina in Australia, and Ballina is, I think, sort of using miles. It's probably about 8 miles south of the most easterly point in Australia.
Gotcha.
And so, some people here argue that we're probably the most easterly point, but just depends on the tide, I suppose, and just ended up, up here. It's no intentions of sort of living up here. Just life just played out and, we just ended up here. So, it's, I can't hear the sea at the moment, but, often I can hear the ocean. I mean, people can look it up if they want. It's just, well, that way, which is Angel's Beach. So I don't know. You can walk up there in 5 minutes and have your feet in the Coral Sea if you want, but I don't go up there often, really, sort of. When I grew up, there was no ocean. You had to drive an hour and a half to get to it. So it's never been important to me, really, the ocean. But sometimes, sometimes you can smell the sea, and of a night time, sometimes when the sea's rough, you can hear it banging, and the house sort of shakes a little bit or something like that, But
Some people, hey man, some people spend good money on those apps that you can listen to the ocean as you're trying to go to sleep. So that's
well,
great for
yeah.
you.
Well, I think when we moved up here, the first couple of nights that, because I was up here on my own before my wife Christine came up here, and I was up here on my own, and I could hear the ocean at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, I'm not sure about this. I mean, is this going to go on all the time? Sort of the boom, 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 and you hear the ocean all the time. But after about 6 months, yeah, don't hear it anymore because you get used to it. And I've got 2 old grandfather clocks here, and they go, every half hour, and one's mum's and one's Christine's mum and dad's, and but I don't hear them anymore. So maybe as I get older, I don't hear much at all.
Like it becomes part of your nature, and
I think sometimes, Paul, selective deafness. And I
wish I
think
could have
that,
that sometimes.
and I think that happens when it comes to not necessarily Titanic, but most things in life, is sort of, I don't know, I just like to listen to bits and pieces and bits and sort of conspiracies and switch things. I don't buy into them. I mean, I used to probably years ago, but I don't know. I
Well,
don't know whether there was two shooters in Dealey Plaza or not. I don't really know. Be interesting to find out.
we all like excitement in life and mysteries. And so I think that's, obviously conspiracies are something people latch onto because they're entertaining. They bring, a spark to the dullness or the um, what monotony of life.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
know, let's just before we jump into this sync theory, we'll give
Mhm.
people a little bit of back, or I'm sorry, the switch theory. We'll give people a little bit of background on you. I know from just hearing you in other interviews that you came to Titanic kind of in a roundabout way. Most people are inspired by a book or a film, and for you, it was a film, but it wasn't A Night to Remember. You didn't. It was a different one. Which one was it that really tipped you in the
Um,
Titanic direction?
well, I suppose when I was growing up, Titanic was not a great topic. The great ocean liners at the time was Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth.
Mm,
And of course, we had reruns that we would see on television, A Night to Remember. And then there was another one with Barbara Stanwyck in it, where that awful sirens going all the time, whatever it was. Um, but after seeing that, I think I wrote in a foreword for a book with Jonathan Smith. It's about film and that. I used to go to school with my sister, and my sister would get sixpence, and I would get two pennies. And one day I got a penny, and it was 1912. It coincided that I'd seen Night to Remember, but that wasn't a big thing. What I really remember is SOS Titanic, and that was I thought SOS Titanic fitted in with my generation. And of course, Raise the Titanic, it was there. I think it's both around 79, somewhere around there. Um, but SOS Titanic, that's the one that really drew me in. And I had an interest in it on and off. And I started work when I was 16. And I do remember there was three or four things, Paul, that I remember when I first started working. And one of them, I think, was that the when one of those um, landers landed on Mars. I
mm.
think that was one that was interesting on Mars. I can't remember. Thought they found life, but they didn't find life. But the other one, Voyager probes, they were still heading out. So I remember one of them going past Uranus and one of them going past Neptune. And that was exciting because I always liked astronomy. And but all of a sudden, one day, boom, boom, they found the wreck of the Titanic. And did it draw me in? Maybe not necessarily, because what we actually got. We were sort of watching television, and some black and white photos, and was it broken in two pieces? That wasn't a question even at the time. And but I remember Robert Ballard's book, and I at that time that I'd gone into town to have lunch with my future wife, and so and I remember going in, and I remember having a pineapple and ham sandwich. I don't think I particularly liked it, but on the way back to the station, because at that time I worked for the railway, I went past a bookshop, and there it was. It was in the bookshop, Robert Ballard's book. So, and I did buy it, and I thought, well, that's okay. Isn't that fantastic? And over the years, because I wasn't involved in sort of expeditions and things like that. I was just sort of an outsider. Um, I used to think to myself in the end, and I've said it before on a few podcasts, what would be interesting is if you're just a time traveler. I mean, it'd have to be on the books, wouldn't it? You'd have to go back and have a look, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And yeah, you just have to go back and do it. And that's how my interest started in it. And then the internet started up 1995, and I bought a computer. Me and Chris bought a computer, old Commodore PC 20 or something, which means PC 20 means 20 megabyte hard drive, so a big hard drive. And we were one of the first ones on the internet in Australia. And that's mad to think about it, and I can still see all the little lovely lights. And, oh, isn't that amazing? And there was only about, I don't know, 100 websites. But there was one website there, and an Australian chap had done it. I can't remember what his name was. And that drew me in. And, that was the introduction to the internet. And then all of a sudden, message boards. And we know of Encyclopedia Titanica, but there was Network 54, and everyone's making, groups, for the Britannic, the Olympic, and all of that. And then popped up Titanic Research and Modelling Association. And most people, perhaps who are listening now, would remember it. And I used to get on there, and because I had nothing to do, I think, oh, Steve, get a life. I used to like, yeah, I used to get on there, and I thought, because I'd read the book Riddle of the Titanic, and I was thinking, yeah, I got drawn in here. And I would say to people, yeah, oh, yeah, they switch the ships, done all this. And at that point, I come into contact with Bruce Beveridge. And that was Bruce, and he was saying, oh, what are you talking about? Da 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 da, whatever it was. And there was all these alternate whatever it was. And I remember that a good mate, a friend of mine now, and I've had dinner with him, Dan Butler. People a lot of know Dan Butler, and had dinner with him in New York. And I used to argue about it, and he used to say to me, he said, "Oh, nah, da, da, whatever it was." And I said, "Yeah, whatever." So
I'm going to interject right here real quick because this is the first time we've addressed the switch theory here on Titanic
mm,
Legacy. My podcast
yeah,
has only been going for about 8 or 9 months now.
yeah,
So if anybody out there is not familiar, so this is the theory that it wasn't Titanic that sank. It was the sister ship that had uh, a, a, gone out a little bit earlier, like a year earlier, and got in an accident. And then the
yeah,
White Star Line wanted to collect on insurance. So they swapped the names on the ship and sank
yeah.
Titanic Olympic on purpose. So that's what the switch theory is. And sorry, to jump back into it, this is what you're talking about at dinners
Yeah.
and on chat boards.
Yeah, that's how it evolved, and I don't think it was that big at the time. And did I, at some point, did I believe that they could have done it? Well, based on what we knew at the time, probably, in the 1995, mid 1990s with the internet, I sort of bought into it a little bit. And I turned around and I seriously started looking at things, and I thought, well, that's how it started me buying the photos. You got to say, well, the ships are the same, and 8x screens, there's 16 the portholes, and I'm sorry, guys, you've heard it all before, 16 portholes, 14 portholes on the port side. You've all heard that. And those that haven't heard it, it came from me. I noticed it. I seen it. Where did the white paint on the wreck around the anchor and all that type of stuff? Oh, well, Olympic was painted white and all. Where did that come from? Come from me. Where did the M&P come from? It came from me too. And because I looked at the footage and I thought that looks like an M and it looks like a P. I was passing this information on. But it
Right.
reached a point, Paul, that I thought to myself, there's no way in the world. The more I looked into it, the more there was no way these ships you couldn't switch it over. So I try to think of everything you could do to do it, and I
Hmm.
could come up with absolutely nothing. So, but I think the bottom line is if the switch came up in 1995, and at that time, Ulster Folk and Transport Museum were releasing their photographs, the Hull and Wolf collection, and Robert J. Welsh. But if you would have gone back to the 1970s, you wouldn't have had access to these photos, likely.
Hmm.
You wouldn't have access, the wreck wouldn't have been found. So if somebody said in 1970 they switched the ships, I would imagine it would be a very hard thing to prove otherwise. Um, and the whole thing's turned up. It disappoints me because I look on TikTok and somebody's going, "Oh, there's Paddy Fenton, and he was on the ship, and he was all that stuff." And you look at it, there's 84 million views,
Hmm.
and I think that's that's which is what's probably created the problem. I wish 84 million people had bought the book. I,
Well, let's talk about that. So this was your first, this was why you became
mm,
an author, really.
it was that the conspiracy drew me in, and that's my introduction to Bruce Beveridge, and and then all of a sudden that we wrote a book, and we just couldn't get a publisher, and so we self-published, and the book done rather well, and I thought, okay, Steve, that's the end of it. That's great. Oh, you get your name on a book. Isn't that great? Look at that. Have a look at that, Mum. Happy 96th birthday, Mum. But here, your son, he's got a name on a book. Isn't that fantastic? But then all of a sudden, along came the idea for Titanic, the ship magnificent. Huge 2-volume book and all that stuff that went into it. And I thought, we done that with Daniel Clistorna. I mean, if you know Titanic, you know Daniel Clistorna, you know Scott Andrews, and we put that out and we thought, oh, okay, then we'll be great. Isn't this fantastic? I've done this magnificent book. Every man and their dog's going to say, oh, get these guys in for an expedition to Titanic. Nah, never heard the phone ring.
Hmm.
Never got a single message. Never heard anything. Bit of a disappointment, but I didn't care because I wouldn't have gone out on an expedition because I wouldn't have got into the lousy little submarines anyway. I mean, I sort of don't like those things. And it developed from there, and it just went crazy from there. And Titanic and Photographs and Sam Halpin's book, which you got a lot of guys in. And then I think, well, I had enough of this, I sort of it sank, guys. Get over, get no, I shouldn't say that. What I do say to people is they say, "Oh, Steve, why did Titanic sink?" I said, "Well, it sank because it was full of water." And I'm and I'm not
Occam,
interested,
Occam's razor, right?
it is. And I'm not interested in whether it broke in two pieces, how long it took to hit the bottom, and whether it turned around and whether it went upside down to something. And, those things have never been of interest to me. What interested me was the photographs.
Mm.
And that's how I come into contact with Daniel Clistorna, because I really love the photos. And I set up a website in 1997 and Titanic Photographic Compendium, and I was selling photographs all around the world.
Hmm.
And I was sourcing from the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, which brought me into contact with a lot of people. And I would have thought that, if I wanted to do a book, Titanic Photographic Companion would have been what I wanted to do. And it didn't happen, but it happened with Titanic and photographs. So, and that's an amazing book, isn't it? Anyone who's got the book, you sort of open the book and have all these photos and so sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
That-
basically, that's it. And then all of a sudden, some guy wants to build another Titanic, and the Chinese want to build a Titanic, and then you get sort of drawn back in again. So
And as it says on your website, his website, if you want to read all about him, it's a great website. He just told me he's actually used to design websites, and that makes sense because his is great. Is Steve Hall, common spelling for both,
yeah,
.nl. And
that's
according
right.
to the website, you actually, Blue Star Line Chairman Clive Palmer appointed
Yeah,
you as the design consultant and historian to the
yeah,
Titanic 2 project.
yeah. So that was a fascinating time. And I had contacted him, and he said, I said, well, maybe we should talk. I said, yeah, that's okay. And he said at the time, which was quite amazing, he said, it wasn't him, I spoke to him. I think it was somebody else who was working with him. And they just said, oh, do you want me to send the helicopter down or the Bentley? I said the Bentley will do fine. And yeah, so I went up and met him. He was a great guy, fantastic. And yeah, had a good talk about things. And, and then a couple of weeks later on, I just said, you've got to come up and see us. So they sent the helicopter down, and I went up and come back down. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, then, so there's no Marconi room there. So, And I remember I remember Clive saying to me, he said, "Oh no, Mark, can't you remember? So, well, maybe you should sort that out." Within 10 days, I was in Helsinki.
Hmm.
So that was the interesting thing. So where Titanic 2 at the moment is, I don't know. It's still in the works. It's up to the boss, if he wants to go forward with that, give you a ring if he wants, or maybe get some younger person in, I suppose.
Every once in a while, it hits the news. Someone's making a new Titanic, and
Well, yeah,
someday,
it's I always say to people, you're sending, expeditions out there, and I think it's a good thing. And a mate of mine, it got plucked up, and all of a sudden he's out there on a thing. It's James Panker.
Mhm.
Good luck to him. He's done a great job. And he's out there and they're doing all these scans of the wreck and bits and pieces and things like that. And I thought, oh, that's, a fantastic thing. But I thought, the easiest thing to do for the general public to see it is, well, why don't you just make another one? I thought that. That was the
Right.
easiest one. I know we can't build another one, Paul, because all the rules and regulations that go with it, and that's, where the lifeboats are, and you can't have wood, accessibility and all this stuff. But the bottom line is that you could make one for probably 800 million.
And just,
That's peanuts because people these days are worth billions.
oh,
So
yeah.
what it tells you is people have got all the money in the world and not interested in Titanic. Otherwise, they'd build one.
I think a lot of, I mean, I'm always fascinated and I like to explore or examine on this podcast what it is that continues to hook people, continues to bring people in. Because, like you
Oh,
said a few minutes ago, it's a
yeah,
ship, it sank, get
yeah,
over it. But we
yeah,
can't. We keep talking about it. New
yeah,
podcasts are popping up every day, sh-
yeah,
new documentaries.
yeah.
What is your feeling on how it continues to grow?
Um, it's probably a big and broad question. Why do people keep visiting Loch Ness? Do they think they're going to see the Loch Ness monster? Um, that's just an analogy. People just they don't hook onto something. They've been brought up over the years, and they think of Titanic, and they think of mysteries, and they think of things in their life, and they say, "What happened to the Indianapolis?" And that was in World War II. They think what about happened to the Yamato, the Japanese battleship. They think about all the different things from World War II and all these things. All of a sudden, you hook in on something. And it's easy to hook in on Titanic because there's so much information, available about it. And there's so many movies that, can just draw you in. I don't know what people think. I myself personally have never had a dream of Titanic. I've never thought to myself, what would I do if I was on the bridge of the Titanic? How would I avoid the iceberg? How would I save myself? I've never thought those things. But there are other people out there and they're just looking to say, oh, okay, then. So why did it hit the iceberg? And you've got the conspiracy and things. But what draws people in? Is it the passengers and the crew? I don't think so. What draws them in is the ship because it was a nice bit of kit. I mean, it looked really Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse, probably Disney will cut us out here. It looked absolutely beautiful. If you wanted to design something that looked really fantastic, it would have been Titanic, wouldn't it? Perfect. Absolutely love it. If you wanted to 200 years from now build a spaceship, you can't tell me you wouldn't make it look like the Enterprise.
Right.
No, you would do that, and you can't understand why Doctor Who doesn't have the TARDIS turn into the Jupiter too, because that looks rather neat too. But what draws people into the Titanic, I can't explain because I talk to so many people, and it's certainly not the switch theory. It's certainly not that. the big draw seems to be the passengers and the crew, and what happened from the time of the impact the, to the time the ship sank, and all the eyewitness statements and that seems to draw people in, and where everyone was, you know.
Yeah, it's a human story. All of the errors that went
Yes.
on and all the what ifs. What if this happened a different way? What if they went straight into the
Yeah, of
thing?
course.
Um,
Yeah. It's
but
a, people say, you've got who was on the bridge? Was it Murdoch, First Officer Murdoch,
mhm.
you know? And, I mean, they knew, Lightoller knew that they were coming into ice around, I don't know, 10:30 or something like that, And so I think it was him who said to the guys in the crow's nest, keep your eye out, icebergs, large ice, bergs, bergs, and growlers, field ice. Keep an eye out, let me know what's going on. Lightoller was, because they were expecting it around about 10:30, quarter to, somewhere around there. What I don't understand is if you thought you were coming into the area, why wasn't the engine room put on standby? Yeah. Because I mean, all you had to do was, if you were Lightoller, and you would phone up whoever was in the engine room. I don't think the chief engineer Bell would have been there. I wouldn't imagine, 11 o'clock, he was probably asleep, so he's 2IC. But you would have phoned up and said, listen, we might have to have an emergency, engine correction here. Be on standby. But I don't think that happened. And, should you put someone right up on the front of the Titanic, right, right at the front, so you sort of watch what's going on? Because if you had someone right on the prow, they're not interfered by any lights or anything, so you've got another pair of eyes at the front. You
Mm.
got the two guys in the crow's nest. Um, you got who's steering the ship? Was it Hitchens?
Mhm.
So he's in the wheelhouse. They've got all these plates, boards up. He can't see. All he's doing is looking at a little light in front of it. And then you've got Murdoch, and he's out on the wing, probably on the starboard side, and he's freezing cold. Could you imagine how cold it was? So he was out there, and I would imagine if it was me and you, say it's me and you, and we're there, and it's 11:20 at night. It's freezing cold. You'd be getting on to somebody and say, can you bring some coffees up? So let's bring some coffees up. Now, if you had a smoke or a pipe, you would have been out there having a smoke, because no one's going to say anything about the watch officer having a cigarette. No one's going to say so. We're supposed to have a cigarette, whatever it was. But I'm sure you're aware of what was going on, and it just happened that the lookouts saw something in front of the ship, and they sort of boom boom, and you can take it whether you know how far you could see it, berg flipping over, white bergs, blue bergs, whatever it was. And then you can say, well, was the ship going too fast? Well, not necessarily. I mean, it only done 22 knots.
Mm.
I mean, it's not fast. You could probably run at 22 knots if there was a pack of Alsatians running after you. So was it necessarily fast? And Captain Smith, he was just there, and was he in the navigation room, or was he in his cabin? He was still wearing his uniform, whatever it was. He was just having a rest there. So um, I don't know. I can't see, given the circumstances, that if it happened again, anything being any different. They thought that they could see something in time to steer around it, and it's as simple as that.
Almost like it was its fate. Very quickly, I'm going to do a commercial for stevehall.nl. If you cruise over there, you can see his complete collection of books, The Ship Magnificent, 2 volumes, as he talked about, reporting to the loss of the SS Titanic, Titanic or Olympic, which ship sank, which is the first Steve Hall book I owned. Titanic and Photographs is in the mail. It's going to be here any day now. Olympic and Titanic, the truth behind the conspiracy, Titanic solving the mysteries, Titanic and 50 objects. I've got that one. I got to check this one out and get it for my kids his Titanic 101, the great
Yeah.
infographic history. I also got to get him the coloring book, of course. But this is all a bunch of amazing stuff on his website. Head over there, stevehall.nl. You mentioned the earliest days of the internet and finding more people in this Titanic tribe. And I think that is
Yeah.
a huge part of why the story continues to grow. We both mentioned TikTok and how the switch theory has lit TikTok on fire lately. But and Clifford Ismay was my first guest in episode one. He said, you know, it's so interesting how Titanic was designed to bring people together, you know, from across the sea, and never got to do that. But she's still doing it on so many levels. Like you and I, we met doing a Titanic. Our friend Joanna Strasberg has a show called the 401 on her RMS Titanic
Hmm.
Facebook page, and that's how
Yeah.
you and I connected. And
Yeah.
that's why this conversation is happening. Thank you, Joanna, for connecting me with Mr. Hall here. And it's just been such a great time. We have to continue the conversation because Titanic is just such a treasure trove of conversation pieces.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the episode, the interview that James Panka, when James Panka had you on his podcast,
Yeah.
Witness Titanic, and you had mentioned how, you know, people can just talk about this,
Yeah.
and finding other people that are interested in talking about it is so important. And that's
Yeah.
the internet has definitely made that a lot easier. And
Yeah.
while new podcasts are popping up every day, new YouTube channels are popping up every day, I feel like there's no, at any point, is there oversaturation for talking about
No.
Titanic?
Well, people could think you can have, you can overload on it, but there's a lot of guys um that are, doing some, great stuff. And you look at all the podcasts, you've probably seen the podcasts, different people doing, things in that. And there's a younger generation coming through, and they're doing all this great research of that and working out who was here and all this type of stuff and that. Do I see an end to it? I don't see an end to it. I think it's become so big that you can't stop it. That's it's I don't know, that, why you here and Joanna Strasberg. And I mean, I like Joanna, and and her podcast and things or whatever she has. What's so great about it is with Joanna is and Dan Curley is it's just an open forum, show books, show items and bits and pieces. And I think that does more for Titanic because it's just showing everyone books, and I've got cards and I've got this and I've got that, whatever. And then if you want to go to a more different side of it, you can step over to what is it? Steam and Splendor,
Hmm.
which those guys are doing at the moment, which is Kent, Tad, and Bill,
Fantastic stuff.
and Bill Sorter too. So that's a more serious side of things. But I don't think that Facebook Titanic groups necessarily is where the future is going to take Titanic. I think it's through Titanic exhibitions. To be honest, I think it's through podcasts like you and I talking. And when people talk about Titanic now, there's a lot of popular people in the field of Titanic, and you spoke to a few of them, and I know most of these people. Um, but when I talk about Titanic, I want to talk to that bloke over there, and he's going to say to me, "Why did it sink?" And I'm going to say, "Because it was full of water." He's going to laugh and he say, "I really like that." He's going to buy one of my books, and he's going to say, "What's your favorite photo, Steve?" And then he might say, then someone else might say, "Ship Magnificent. What's your favorite volume?" You know, I mean, what about "Oh, I've heard all this business. What's this? Three blades on the center prop. Did it have four? And she sit there and say, "Oh, well, once you email Mark Churnside. That'd be the last thing it was. But he's onto something because I think it was three-bladed. And all of a sudden, these more interesting things keep coming up. So I sometimes talk to people in the Titanic community, and what interests me is about, because, with icebergs have got rocks in them, and I can't remember what they're called, eccentric, something, whatever it was. And I think I said to David Gallo, I said, round the wreck, I mean, are there rocks which were inside icebergs, sort of, around the wreck? And he said, yeah. And I think from memory that there's another shipwreck, which is about, I think, 6 miles away from Titanic. So there was a whole war fought out there. I hate this too, especially. There's a whole war out there. There were ships being sunk all the time. There's boats and there's ships all over the place. So the question I often get to is, why did it take so long to find the wreck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now people are going to say, oh, the Carpathia got there and it must have been going so fast, and Rostrum and Sir James Bissett, James Bissett, second officer, and he went on to become captain and Commodore, the Cunard, and he married an Australian girl. So anyone who is Australian out there, he married a nice Australian girl. All those things, I think, need to be further explored. We've got the wreck, we've got it all down there. What interests me now is the Carpathia. What interests me now is the Californian. And it interests me what they didn't ask at the Titanic inquiries, because I think I'd said before when I was talking to James Panker, I said to him, I can tell you it's absolutely 100%. There was a lookout on the Californian. He was in the crow's nest on the Californian. So why wasn't he called, to testify? What did he say? And who do you blame? There's nobody to blame for any of this. And I think that I said that if you and I were on Titanic and it was 11:15, it's freezing cold. I don't think they had hot water bottles then, did they? I mean, you can have a hot water bottle and shove it down your greatcoat. I don't think you had that. But you wouldn't have been having a whiskey or a drink, but you would have had a coffee, probably English, you had a cup of tea or grey, whatever it was. But you would out there and you had a bloody cigarette and a smoke, whatever you're doing. And it comes back to what were they doing on the Californian and what was happening on the Carpathia. And that's what interests me. And I don't blame Captain Lord, and I don't stand on his side. He stopped the ship. There was ice all over the place. He didn't go in reverse to get out of the ice field, because you won't go in reverse in an ice field because you're going to damage your rudder and your prop. So you understand that. Best thing was to do was just sit there. And he was sitting there and watching what's going on and whatever it is, and whoever it was, Phillips and whoever it was, Marconi sending out messages and, buy shares and stocks. Sounds like the Nazi movie. Don't buy stocks because it's broke the world record. But I don't blame him. He just turned it off and went to bed. What I don't understand is why one of the officers on Carpathia just didn't go down and have a word to the fellow in the Marconi room and just say,
You
he
mean
was the officer. You could watch
the
on,
Californian?
wake up.
Yeah.
And then that opens Pandora's box. Could Carpathia have got there in time? California got there in time? Not likely. So,
In time to pluck a few people out of the water, but not save everyone. That's what
well,
they say.
I don't know. I mean, you can ask, what was the California supposed to do? How many lifeboats did it have? I mean, you get there, you're going to start fishing people out. I think James Bissett said in his book, Ladies and Tramps, I think he said in regards to Lord, he said, what a incredible opportunity missed. Yeah. And even if he woke up the Marconi chap and they turned and they got there even and it sank and it went down. So would you be talking about Lord or would you be talking about Carpathia? Because both the ships would have been there recovering the lifeboats. So
Yeah.
missed opportunities.
Well, this has been such a pleasure. I asked you for a half hour. I took even more. So I appreciate your time. We're going to have to, if you wouldn't mind coming back on the show and continuing the conversation,
Oh,
very much enjoy that.
well, I think what the bottom line is with all of it is that, Paul, if you're going to talk to an historian, talk to the historian as if he's a person and ask him what he thinks. And then he can give you his own personal opinions without it being loaded from historical fact. It's only a matter of what do I think, what do you think, what would you and I do? But
Right.
I can tell you before we disappear, I would have given most things that I have right now to being on the Carpathia at that time, racing towards Titanic, firing off the rockets and doing all that. I would have given I would have given another 2 for it. I think that would have been fantastic. So, all right, not a problem.
If only we had that time machine that you and James Penka
Well, I don't have
dreamed
that
of.
time machine, and I don't know. I mean, what is it called? A TARDIS, is it?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a TARDIS. I mean, maybe it was a Time Lord, and they took the time circuit off me or something. But I did say to James before we disappear, YouTube's not going to catch up off. I've often thought to myself, if I could go back in time, what am I going to go back and have a look at? And as I said to James, I want to see how they built the pyramids.
Mm.
That's what I would like to see. Apart from the fact that it was one block at a time.
Right.
I would really like that. And if I could go on Titanic on the trip from Belfast down to Southampton, I would have done that, and I would make sure I took a camera with me.
Yeah.
And then we would know whether the clock was on the grand staircase or not, would we?
That's right. I'd
Yeah.
love to have taken that trip with Father Brown and gotten off at Queenstown. That would be the way to go.
Well, I mean, they knocked him back because he said, "Can I go on to New York?" And they said, "You can't do it."
Yeah.
But if you really wanted it and you'd been him, you would have said, "I'm going anyway." Because didn't someone say that I'll pay your fare?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have
That's
said,
what.
"Well, I can be a Jesuit priest, whatever it is, just as easily in Ireland as I can be in America."
It's true. He really enjoyed his time on the ship. It's too bad that he got off, but it's good because we still have his photos. Who knows if we would have before. And if you enjoyed your time listening to our conversation, please be sure to rate, leave a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. I want to say thank you one more time to our amazing guest, Steve Hall. Thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope to do it again. And thank you to everyone for listening and tuning in. Until the next episode, seize the day, follow your heart's fire, and make each day count.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. See you, mate. Bye-bye.